Ghost of Tsushima is gaming perfection. An amazing story, a protagonist that you feel invested in from the beginning, and a visually stunning world to explore. Ghost of Tsushima succeeds in providing an artistic direction within a game that feels very different from games that we typically see and play, and manages to provide an experience which is so authentic and rewarding for the player. The game is bloody, gritty and engaging, with an incredible storyline and impressive environments and characters, alongside an amazing soundtrack that perfectly complements the game. Ghost of Tsushima is arguably one of the finest games released in the modern era. It's a piece of art and is rightly cherished by the video game community, even if reviewers weren't entirely convinced upon release. Few games offer a world this impressive, even fewer can combine this with a story that captures the feel of feudal Japan and a brutal war in which thousands were killed or imprisoned. The game throws together a story based on the way of the samurai and the efforts of Jin Sakai to rid his island of the Mongol invaders by going against his samurai creed and employing tactics befitting of a thief. He battles not only his Mongol invaders, but also his connection to the samurai as we explore his move towards guerrilla tactics and away from the code which has shaped his life and philosophy. Sucker Punch, who produced this game, have created, in my opinion, a masterpiece that delves deep into the themes of honour, duty, sacrifice, and the cost of human war. So come on, Sucker Punch, give the people what they want and announce that second game. The game is split into 3 separate acts, and the story begins with the legendary real-life event of the Battle of Komoda Beach. Lord Jin Sakai and his uncle Lord Shimura stand alongside the samurai warriors of Tsushima, ready to meet the approaching Mongol invaders. The battle results in the destruction of the samurai of Tsushima and the spread of Mongols throughout the island. Lord Shimura is captured by the Mongol leader Khotun Khan, and Jin is left for dead on the beach. Jin himself is rescued by a thief named Yuna, who nurses him back to health and helps him recover his samurai gear before he embarks upon his mission to free his uncle, Lord Shimura. Jin heads for Castle Canada, where Shimura is being held and challenges the Khan to a fight. Jin ultimately is beaten easily, and the Khan explains that he has the upper hand after studying the Japanese, learning their language, and identifying the weaknesses within the samurai's code as they fight with honour, and the Khan is prepared to do whatever necessary to succeed. Jin is pushed from the bridge on which the fight takes place and realises other methods will need to be devised to beat the Khan and free his uncle. He seeks the help of samurai Sensei Ishikawa, a bowmaster who was not at Komoda Beach, and Lady Adachi, whose husband died at the hands of the Khan when he was set ablaze at the very start of the game. He also works with his rescuer, Yuna, to save her imprisoned brother Taka, who is an expert blacksmith and will be useful in fashioning tools for Shimura's rescue and the retaking of the island. Jin seeks the help of old friend and leader of the Straw Hat Ronin, Ryuzo, who informs him he will as long as he can secure food for his men who are starving. With his allies now in place, Jin begins his assault on Castle Canada, and he is without Ryuzo and his Straw Hats, who have not shown up. Regardless, they push on to reach the inner gates of the castle. But before reaching Shimura, Jin encounters Ryuzo, who informs him that the Khan has gone north, and he himself and the Straw Hats have joined the Mongols so that they can feed themselves. The price? Jin's head. They fight it out, but Ryuzo escapes and Jin manages to rescue Lord Shimura. Jin is becoming notorious for his tactics and methods to dispatch the Mongols, and Shimura provides a warning to fight them honourably. However, this does not deter Jin, who continues to employ the same tactics as he recruits the warrior monks led by Norio and the warriors of Yarikawa to fight for Tsushima and retake Castle Shimura, home to Jin's uncle and now held by the Khan. A message is dispatched to the shogun, and the samurai from the mainland arrive to help bolster Lord Shimura's forces. The attack of the castle begins, but Jin continues down the path of the ghost, employing tactics not befitting a samurai and moving further down a destructive path, with it coming to a head when Jin scouts beyond the main force and Shimura and the samurai witness him decapitate a general and then brandish his head to the Mongols in his hand to incite fear. Their attack is thwarted when the Mongols destroy the bridge to the main keep, and Jin, sensing a bloodbath once they repair the bridge and tackle the Mongols head on, petitions Shimura to allow him to poison the Mongols and the Khan and end this once and for all. Shimura's response:
I sacrificed everything I knew to save our people. I gave them hope. You did nothing! No. We're finished.
Jin decides to go it alone. He scales the walls of the castle and poisons the Mongol milk before entering the keep, and expecting to find the Khan, finds Ryuzo. Ryuzo, knowing he's made a grave error in siding with the Mongols, asks Jin to lie and say that he was a spy working for the ghost behind enemy lines. Jin refuses and insists that Ryuzo hand himself across to Lord Shimura to face justice. Ryuzo refuses and the two duel. Jin ultimately defeats Ryuzo and provides him with an honourable death at the end. However, upon exiting the keep to announce the defeat of Ryuzo and the Khan's fleeing, Shimura confronts Jin in front of the samurai and pleads with him to return to their way and to abandon the ghost, a moniker that has been bestowed upon him by the people of the island due to his heroics. Shimura also wants Jin to turn on Yuna and blame her for his actions, as the shogun will need somebody to blame. Jin refuses and proclaims himself the ghost and is thrown in prison, likely facing death. The game begins to draw to a close as Jin escapes prison with Kenji, the sake dealer's assistance, and brings his allies together for a final attempt to kill the Khan in the north. He tracks him to Port Izumi and plans their attack. Before doing so, he sneaks into Castle Shimura and leaves his uncle a note.
Forgive me for not facing you in person. The Khan's fleet has gathered at Port Izumi. His ships are loaded with poison that will devastate the Shogun's army. But when the next storm arrives, I plan to kill the Khan and sink his fleet. I ask that you join me. I hope we can meet again. If not as father and son, then as warriors who have walked different paths. Whatever you believe I've become, I will always be your family.
Jin begins his attack and tracks the Khan through the port before Shimura arrives with his forces to aid Jin and his allies. Jin fights off multiple Mongols and then approaches and kills the Khan, stating that history won't remember him. In the aftermath of the battle, Jin is contacted by Lord Shimura and the two meet in their old sparring circle near Omi village. Shimura takes his nephew to the Sakai clan cemetery and announces he has been tasked with bringing the shogun Jin's head, as Jin has been labelled an outlaw. The two fight it out in an epic final scene, and after defeating Shimura, Jin has the option of giving him an honourable death or leaving him alive. The story for me is masterfully written, and a key component of why this game is so captivating is the story of Jin Sakai, a man who as a child refused to help save his father just before he was murdered. He ends up growing up alongside his uncle Lord Shimura and becomes a samurai for the clan Sakai, taking his father's place. His cowardice led to his father's death, and this decision haunts him throughout the game, but it also drives him to really become and embrace the character of the Ghost. His desire to save his homeland and the people of Tsushima is driven by failure to save his father and their home when attacked when he was just a young boy. Jin's story arc over the 3 acts follows his transformation from noble samurai to a dishonourable outlaw who strayed away from the samurai code in order to save his homeland. As Khotun Khan had studied the samurai, Jin realised he must undertake other methods in order to succeed and drive out the Mongol force, which was now raping, pillaging and plundering his beloved island of Tsushima. We see Jin's transformation play out in front of us, from his early stealth kills, some of which initiate flashbacks of Jin training with his uncle as a young boy, and these flashbacks would be in correlation with exactly what he had done in that moment and what Lord Shimura taught him was the samurai way. Both of these things were often coming into conflict with one another. See this as an example.
An assassin! From Yarikawa! Traitor! You would stab the Chido in the back! Lord Sakai! Control yourself. We are not criminals, like this man here. We are samurai.
He tried to kill you! He must answer for this crime with his life.
And look him in the eye. And teach him that samurai never acts out of anger or fear. And take his life with honor.
The betrayal by Ryuzo is also a significant moment within the game, a former childhood friend of Jin, who had harboured a huge amount of dislike towards Jin based on a tournament they both participated in, where Jin had defeated Ryuzo, who, if he had have won, would have become a samurai. Ryuzo's betrayal dramatically affects Jin and pushes him to destroy the Khan, but also to seek retribution for his friend's cowardly betrayal. Jin himself develops into a ruthless killer, utilising all skills and weapons at his disposal to destroy the Mongols and liberate villages. With each passing kill, he follows a path away from the samurai code and towards an outlaw. We realise that there is an inevitability of a conflict between Jin and his uncle, and the game concludes with Lord Shimura being tasked by the shogun of bringing him Jin's head. "This is my punishment," Shimura informs his nephew. And I'll speak more about this at the conclusion of the game later in the video, as this deserves, in my opinion, probably a bit more discussion and probably its own section. One of the game's major strengths is the beautiful world of Tsushima that you get to play in. The level of detail is astounding, from the overall visual magnificence of the world you inhabit, to the artistic loading screens as a mission starts, to the game's incredible soundtrack, to the subtle interactions between Jin and his horse when he's feeling low after a mission concludes. This here is when Yuriko dies and is straight after Jin has buried her. The subtle nudge from the horse is just simply amazing. And to say that this landscape is incredible to play in is an understatement. It's so impressive, from the snow-capped roads of the north, to the lower lying plains of the middle of the island, to the more hilly terrain of the south. You'd come across vast swathes of grassland, and it's so well crafted, seeing the grass itself sway backwards and forwards with the wind, that you would often stop just to take in the moment and the scenery. You're immersed, you're invested, and most importantly, it encourages you to ride to your destinations and avoid the easy fast travel option. The developers have even removed any clutter on the screen. There's no visible map, weapons are not displayed, nor are there any other directional images. The screen you view allows you to fully take in the world as you roam, and there's just no distractions in any way, shape or form. Just Jin, the horse, and Tsushima. That's it, and frankly, that's all you need to enjoy this game. As mentioned, there's no map on screen to help direct you to your destination. You instead rely on the guiding wind, which is meant to represent the spirit of Jin's father, which identifies the route to your destination. You do have the ability to pull the map if you are totally lost, but just this small detail of the wind really adds to the game's authentic feel and the strength of its overall design. There's further subtle masterclasses within the game, for example the character details during cutscenes, the beads of sweat that we can see falling down Jin's face, the blood splatter during cutscenes just after a battle, Jin's clothing either full of mud or soaking wet depending on what type of terrain you're moving through. There's clearly an artistic theme recurring throughout the game, and you feel it in every interaction you have throughout your progression in the game, even in completing levels when the text screen turns to Sakura, Japanese for blossom, and blows away with the wind. The combat within the game draws you in with its grit, its blood, and its varying difficulty and variety throughout. You can unlock 4 different stances which have different strengths against different types of enemies. Stone stance is best against swords, water stance can break through shields, wind stance can pierce through the defense of spear users, and moon stance is effective against brutes. Within these stances you had a vast array of moves that Jin could perform, a bulk of them being unlocked as you progress through the game and acquired skill points. The variety of these moves are just so incredible, and some of them just so fun. For example, the jumping spin move for the wind stance, where Jin would launch his blade into the enemy's shoulder. The combat was just so engaging and brutal that it just never felt old. I'd purposely stop many times along the road to challenge a group of wandering Mongols or Ronin to a duel, just to improve Jin's abilities, and for myself so that I could get used to switching stances within fights, specifically for the more difficult missions later on. The combat can be challenging, especially as you progress, but it's designed to be that way, so that it is engaging and challenging for the player and pushes you to level up Jin's abilities, giving a just reward for your efforts in time, which doesn't feel forced in any way. There's also so many additional side missions to explore within the world, and amazingly they don't feel forced either. They all have their own value and they tell their own unique stories, which you really want to conclude as the player. And there is also the need to finish off stories for Sensei Ishikawa in his quest to find his traitorous former pupil, Tomoe. There's the conclusion to Lady Adachi's quest to find her family's killers and collaborators. And there's just so many more Mongol settlements to liberate across the island. All in all, there's another 25 hours of additional content within the game for you to fully complete it. And again, it doesn't feel like a chore. Some games you will conclude the story and just don't really see the value in completing those side quests. They're not integral to the actual main quest, but within Ghost of Tsushima, you do. You want to. And there's still such strong stories, so they push you to continue playing long after the game's main storyline has ended. And speaking of endings, I said I would come back to this. What an ending. Ghost of Tsushima has quite possibly one of the most incredible endings to a game that I've seen in a long time. The culmination of the game's events, Jin's evolution into the Ghost, and that impending conflict between the way of the samurai and the Ghost's dishonourable tactics. As I mentioned earlier, it was all inevitable, and it all came down to a final, well-written moment between Jin and his uncle.
Honor me with a warrior's death. I will make sure you are remembered as a great warrior, a wise leader, and a father. Thank you, my son. Find me in the next life. I will.
It's simply jaw-dropping. It's an incredible ending. The music, the dialogue, the theme of honour, Jin's cries, the environment with the autumnal leaves signifying death. Everything is crafted together to provide an outstanding ending to a game that so thoroughly deserves it. And just a final nod to the developers on this game. The developers at Sucker Punch Productions put a great deal of effort into creating a beautiful and immersive world that captures the essence of feudal Japan. It's so well done. So much time was invested into capturing the right feel for this game. The evidence is just all around you. I also learned shortly after playing for the first time that the production team made not one, but 2 trips to Tsushima so they could get a feel for the world that they were building in order to capture it correctly and represent it as accurately as possible. When devs put this level of effort into their shows within the design, and players massively respect this, I'd rather wait 5 years for a beautifully made game that's been well researched and executed than some rushed yearly garbage release which focuses on pumping out the next generic piece of shit that they can cash in on. Overall, Ghost of Tsushima is an incredible game. Focusing on the Mongol invasion of 1274, it comes to represent absolutely everything that is incredible with video games. I love it. I can't get enough of it, and I genuinely may just go and complete it to 100% and then replay it again to complete it for a 4th time. If you haven't played it yet, go get it, enjoy it, and thank me later. Jump into the comments, let me know what you think, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next one.